is the one who taught me how to have respect for the grizzly bears, and it's just been passed down to my brothers and then down to me. Always had respect for the grizzly bears, and we always gave offering. We give offering to the Taku River, to the grizzly bears, and salmon, everything. We give offering for safety and peace between humans and the animals. When you meet a bear, talk to him. They seem to understand you really, really well. I never had a conflict with a grizzly bear once yet. I ran into a few of them in my traveling times on the river, and the relationship between the bears and the Tlingit people is very strong, very, very strong.
It was in the mid-1970s that I became involved in a study of Chinook salmon in the Taku River drainage. The Weir was a component of that study, and it was built on the downstream periphery of the largest Chinook salmon spawning habitat in the entire system. It was also a known grizzly bear habitat. The Weir was designed to collect the Chinook salmon after they had spawned. Once the fish were stopped by the Weir, they were moved to one side of the river where they were sampled for various physical characteristics and age. Initially, we deterred the bears when they came to the Weir, but before long it became obvious that deterring the bears brought us as much or even more grief than if we had tolerated them. Because they weren't welcome while we were working there, they all came when we left. And because there were so many of them, their constant interactions resulted in them doing a lot of damage to the Weir. Our intolerance made the bears wary of us, and from that point on, that wariness increased the risk of all the encounters we had with them. Many of the bears had become very defensive. Safety had become an issue, so it was decided to see if we could get along with these bears. I was also motivated to get along with the bears by the fact that I wasn't the first human to take up residence in this area. Taku River Tlingit people lived in this valley for eons, and archaeology has proven that there was a Tlingit summer fishing camp just a few hundred meters from where the Weir was located. And those people were here at the same time to harvest and dry salmon. So I felt their situation wasn't so much unlike what I was doing. After any discussions I ever had with Tlingit elders in regards to bears, I was never left with the impression that they were ever in conflict with them. I was more led to believe their relationship with bears was more one of coexistence. We stopped displacing the bears and began taking a more neutral presence. So we went from keeping the bears away from us to interacting with them. I'll never forget the first couple of times that I tolerated some of these bears at close proximity. And I was hoping that this bear all of a sudden wasn't going to take some revenge out on me for all the rocks and rubber bullets that I hit it with. So I suppose the first most important thing I learned about these bears was how incredibly forgiving they are. It was pretty humbling, but after a few weeks, these interactions became more routine. It was an exciting routine, but it did become routine. We were witness to a lot of arguments between the bears, and over time it became obvious that they were expert in avoiding physical conflict. And because they treated us like they treated each other, I felt that the chance of one of them physically assaulting one of us was extremely unlikely. And that gave me the confidence to continue building this relationship with them. There were several bear behaviors that I became comfortable using myself toward them. One of the most common behaviors the bears displayed was an ignoring behavior, where they would simply ignore each other to access the food source. So when I was approached by a bear, my first reaction was to ignore it. I would keep an eye on the bear, and if the encounter became confrontational, I would dig into my bear repertoire and stay one step ahead of it in dominance. I discovered what it took for a bear to win superiority over another bear. So I practiced a few of those behaviors as well. I watched many a bear just take one step toward another bear. So I started doing that, and it worked. I never used retreat as an option during an encounter at the Weir ever again. I found that if a bear demanded stronger persuasion,
Okay, Tom, get out of here.
my tone of voice usually got the desired effect. If the bears behaved, I didn't bother them. But if they threatened us or damaged the Weir, then I let them know immediately that I was not pleased. I'd been told by Tlingit elders that if you speak to a bear, it understands what you're saying and will do what you want. I started to use command words, the most common of which was the word no. If we caught a bear doing something unacceptable, I hollered the word no.
No!
And if the bear didn't stop its behavior, it received a consequence. We found that after no more than 2 or 3 of these training sessions, a bear would immediately stop a behavior when just hearing the word no.
No!
And to me, that just spoke volumes about their level of intelligence.
Hey, those are our fish there.
Once we became more familiar with each other, I found it took very little encouragement to keep them at an acceptable distance. Most of the bears seemed a little unsure of just what I might be capable of doing to them, and they all seemed to respect the fact that I never did it, whatever that may have been. I showed the bears that I wouldn't invade their personal space, and I could see that they were returning that same courtesy. And over time, especially with some of the more habitual users of the Weir, that space just got smaller and smaller.
Okay, we got 2 males.
I first started working at the Weir in 2003. I was surprised at kind of the level of coexistence that existed there and the kind of interactions that did occur. I had some impression of what it was, but it was a lot more than I thought. The first day I went down there, this grizzly bear is getting closer and closer and closer, and I was kind of looking at Phil and looking at the bear and kind of, so like, how close are you gonna let this bear get? There were probably 2 seasons that I worked with Phil where Phil and I worked there pretty much for the entire season together.
First time I went down to the Weir, I was a bit apprehensive. It was a new area for me, and the populations of bears were quite different from anywhere I've been. I didn't know what to expect. The first few encounters were a little jumpy, but after that, it's just like I was meant to be there.
My first visit to the Weir was in 2004. When I arrived at the Weir, it exceeded my expectations of what I would see, and just the presence of bears, it blew me away. It was life-changing for me. I remember my first trip down to the Weir, we were idling down towards the Weir in the boat, and there were 7 grizzly bears on the Weir. And my eyes were wide, and I was like, oh my goodness, and Mark was totally cool and calm. It's like, okay, this will be interesting. At one point, we're surrounded by 9 bears, and I never once felt threatened or scared. I kind of had an idea of what to expect to see, but I had no idea of how I would feel. It's really difficult to describe that feeling that I still have, and it's awe, respect, and gratitude and peace.
Knowing what I know from taught by my elders and stuff about how you talk to the bears, seeing that come out with Phil and with Mark, it's exactly the way my people taught me, my elders, my uncles, my dad, that it's all about respect, and they respect you too. It's right in my traditional territory. There's villages that were there before. I've walked all through the area, so I know it quite well. I mean, finding cultural things like cash pits, and to know that the bears have always been there, and the people may have moved on to, these towns and stuff where we live now, but we all live together down there, and the relationship my people develop with them, it's just something else. It's like the bears remember us a bit from a long time ago.
Hey, settle down, guys. We're breaking our rear. Yeah, let's break our rear, Tony.
At the Weir, we have a table there. And at this table, we use the table for sampling fish. But the table is also the preferred place for bears to fish. So my morning at the Weir, more often than not, starts off with taking the boat down to the Weir and essentially displacing a bear from its preferred feeding spot. And it's an incredibly civilized process. We don't have to scream and shout and shoot guns off and throw rocks at them. You basically just arrive and, come on, you got to get off. We're going to work now. Sometimes you got to clap our hands. Once they know we're serious and we're going to work, they don't defend the table. They leave. Sometimes they only go, 10 meters away, 20 meters away and go fish over there. When we're finished sampling the fish, we'll go back to the boat, and then the bear sees we're off the table, and they'll come over and jump up on the table and stay there until we're ready to go back to work, and then it's like, come on. So I always find it really interesting, like they don't defend the table against us, but they will defend the table against each other. And there are lots of interactions that happen, not usually like a full-out fight. They'll defend the table against another bear, but they don't defend the table against us. And I always found that kind of really, really interesting.
The relationship with the bears is one that's based on mutual respect, tolerance, and trust, actually. And they associate us with the Weir, and they watch us set it up, they watch us take it down. And so they've figured out how to behave on the Weir if they want to fish for salmon there while we're working.
Bears understand and respect boundaries. They really do. And that's the only reason we can do what we do down there. I try to be very consistent about what I say, how I say it, and I often accompany it with certain hand signals. If they're coming close to me while I'm on the gate, I'll use my gaff and I'll point and I'll say the exact same thing in the same tone of voice and use the same hand signal every time. They're open to that communication. They're open they understand boundaries.
We spend a lot of our time with our backs to the bears. We respect them. They're there for the fish. They know we're there for work. and that we develop a relationship that we both know that there's a little give and take there, but neither one of us pushes. Sometimes it gets a little, hairy, but it's usually resolved easily. No, never a problem.
One particularly amazing experience was when Hollywood crossed the river in front of the weir with her cubs. Mark was standing on the weir counting salmon as they swam up through the gate. And she just kept walking past Mark, and the cubs were crawling along the weir and walked over top of Mark's feet. And she kept walking to the far bank and didn't look back. So she was totally unconcerned about Mark's presence, and there was trust. Like, that's an example of trust for sure.
That was a really powerful moment for me, and it was just like, wow, she did not see me as a threat at all. After that, we changed things up at the weir so that really couldn't happen again. Anytime we have a gate or anything like that, we really build an escape route, so that I can kind of pop over and basically just get out of the way. As interesting and as cool as that particular experience was, it's just not something we're gonna set up to happen again.
I developed quite the relationship with one bear down there. We call her Katie, and seeing her since she was born till now, and it's something I look forward to every year. And I had to miss one summer because unfortunately the job changed. I went and worked somewhere else for the summer, and that was such a bummer because I missed out on her that year. And I thought about her all summer. Like, I was wondering how she's doing.
Those relationships and that kind of deep coexistence didn't come about because people wanted to see where we could take coexistence or wanted to tame bears. That's not how that all came about. It came about because we need to have that kind of coexistence to do the job that we are down there to do. I think it's going to be really important how things get handed on to the next people working at the weir, and ensuring that those folks, really understand how to engage with the bears that are down there, and to maintain that respect and to maintain that relationship, which is valuable on so many different levels.
It feels good for my soul when I'm down there, being close to the bears like that. Like, I always felt that the way we work with them down there is the right way. And one of my most favorite memories is when I was sitting on the shore and these 3 young of the year ran right behind me, and I managed to get like a selfie photo of one of the bears right behind me. And I have it somewhere kicking around, but it was just a perfect photo because he stopped right behind my shoulder, like inches away, and looked right at the camera. It was just, I don't know how more perfect that picture could have been. The hard part is missing those old bears. I think it's Bernice and Foamy. Like, they were there and they were a big part of me being out there. Every year I would look forward to seeing Bernice, and just even the way she'd fish, chase around the fish like other bears. And Foamy too, her attitude, she was just great, man. I loved her. Like, seeing her seeing the young, because they always came back with the young, and like whether the young made it to the next year or whatnot, you know, they always had young, and oh man, I just look forward to seeing them. And they were usually the first bears you'd see when you get down there.
My time at the Weir has been a monumental life experience, and it's prepared me to work with bears in other areas in a number of different capacities. I've become very fond of bears, and that's a result of getting to know and spending time with several individual bears throughout their entire lives. And it's also from the realization of just how intelligent they really are, and how that allows them to coexist with us. The other thing I appreciate and find so refreshing about these bears is just how brutally honest they are. The Weir is not a notion, nor is it an idea. This project has been running for 45 plus years. It's seen thousands upon thousands of close-up interactions between people and grizzly bears without any damage done to a single bear or a human. I think that says a lot about the value of this project for those that wish to coexist with bears, and also for those that find themselves in conflict with bears.
It's the most interesting and exciting thing I do every year. It's a highlight of my year and really of my life. You know, I think when I look back, you know, I'm incredibly privileged to have the opportunity to work there and to work there consistently year after year, and to see the changes on the river and the changes in the bears and the bear population and who grows up. And a lot of those really kind of classic females who were there when I first started, and they, you know, they've kind of passed on now, and there's new generations coming, and you know, just to see those kind of generations of bears over the years, it's a powerful experience. Yeah, it's been amazing.
You're okay, Gwen. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay, Gwen.
This job means everything to me. It's the highlight of my life. I've been volunteering at the Weir since 2005, and I'm always really excited to go there and really sad to leave at the end of the season.
This job means the world to me. It's something I would never give up for anything. It gives me hope for the future because I want to pass on the knowledge I have to the younger generation, especially in this age of technology. I've had offers to take summer jobs elsewhere, and it always messes with that time of year. I'm like, nah, it's all right. I'll stick with what I love. I feel it all the way down the bottom of my soul, and that's where it'll always be. Every year I come out, I leave a little bit more of me there and take a little bit more of it with me. And I can't wait, you know. It's coming soon.
A single most important piece of advice that I could give anyone wishing to coexist with bears, it would also be the easiest thing you can do. And that is to never, ever, ever let a bear access your food or your garbage.
We have bears that forage on berries in our camp. We're working around them all the time, and we keep a very clean camp. There's no way a bear is ever going to get into our food or garbage.
We don't allow dogs at the Weir. Where bears do exhibit some aggressive behavior, where they stand their ground, you can act in such a way as to mitigate that. But if you have a dog running around, it creates a whole level of chaos you can't control. If your dog is putting a run on a bear, it is essentially attacking that bear. If your dog wasn't with you, would you run and attack a bear as an intelligent way of engaging that animal and defending yourself? Most people would say, no, that's ridiculous.
Dogs can just as well get hurt or bring a bear charging right up on you because, if he doesn't know what he's doing. I would hate to see something like that happen. We got to maintain a nice level of harmony between both people and the bears.
If you plan to visit a location that you know you're going to encounter bears, you should probably leave your dog at home. Unless you've spent the hundreds of hours necessary to train your dog to act appropriately around bears, the dog could become a serious liability. A trained dog is one capable of displaying the same level of tolerance and respect towards bears as you will have to display. I often hear from people that the bears at the Weir are different than the bears they encounter in other locations. I can say with confidence that these bears are no different than bears that live elsewhere. I've applied the same techniques I learned from dealing with the bears at the Weir to those in many other locations, and can honestly say their reactions to me and the behaviors they display toward me are exactly the same.